Hello everyone, it's Jenifer for Jessie James Beads Magical Mystery Bead Box for June. We are going to make a necklace using some of the beads from the Sunshine and Saltwater Mix and Metal Mix, also the High Tides and Good Vibes Double Strand, the Southern Shore Strand, and the gorgeous, cute little Feeling Salty strand, as well as the Sandy Toes chain. You're also going to want to grab some 18 and 22 gauge wires. So let's get started. For tools, you're going to need chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, maybe a second pair of chain nose pliers, and some cutters. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a couple of dangles. I've already made two using a bead from the High Tide Good Vibes, as well as a little Hishi bead and a bead cap. And I just made my own head pin using some 22 gauge wire and just made another little dangle. We're going to make a couple of dangles together, and I actually cut away a piece of that chain so that I can have a nice long dangle. Using this chain as a dangle is kind of cute, and I just thought it would be nice just to mix things up a little bit and add one of the, and I'm going to save those little beads too, so we're going to use those little beads for later as well. The other dangle, we're going to use one of those spacers and actually use it as a charm. So we'll show you how to do that as well. You're going to want to grab a good comfortable length of 22 gauge wire. And I already made two dangles, and we're going to use our round nose pliers. And at the very tippy tip, and I'm just going to twist around and twist away, and you're going to make two full rounds around the little barrel there. And when you feel that end back to the front, go ahead and just take that wire and bend that straight up. I'm working with a 5-inch piece of wire. Now we're going to take the tail of that wire and pass it back through that little coil that we just made. There you go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take one pair of pliers for the end so that we can pull with. And then we're going to use the nylon jaw pliers section of these pliers, and we're going to give it a big pull, but be careful not to let it slip. And then also too, what I like to do is I like to just flatten it out on the end. It's not necessary, it's just a personal preference. And now we have a good knotted head pin for us to thread one of these oval beads onto. So we're going to thread our oval bead on, and I don't want a long neck. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the wire and just bend it over that 90-degree angle, and I'm going to come in with my round nose pliers and form that wire over the top of the top barrel. Just form that over. I'm not pulling on the wire. Rotate your wrist, push the tail to the back, get that all nice and evened up. But before we do anything, we're going to thread on our chain directly on to that loop. There you go there. Isn't that pretty? Then we're going to add our chain nose pliers to the very end on top of the loop. And then we're going to take that tail wire and wrap around a couple of times downwards. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make a nice bulky wrap. And we're going to bring that wire back towards my right hand so that you have a second layer of wrapped wire. Once you get that all wrapped around to the back, we can go ahead and come in with our cutters with the flush side, and we're going to just trim off that end. And then we're going to bring in another pair of pliers. I like using my bent nose pliers because we're going to tuck in that little tail that's in there. And there we have our first dangle. Well, actually, our third dangle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make the dangle with the spacer. So come down about 1.5 inches, give the 90-degree angle bend, and I'm going to come in a little further up so that I can have a bigger loop to go around the center of that spacer. We're going to again form over the top barrel. You're going to even things out. I guess center it. You're not evening it out. You're centering it. There you go. Then we're going to open it up a little bit so that we can sneak it and pass it through into that spacer and just finagle it just a little bit. And it takes sometimes a little bit to get that in there, but once you get it in there, look how gorgeous that is. So now what I want to do is I need to come in with that set of chain nose pliers, close that off, then start wrapping. I'm going to bring in a second pair because that one was a little short. And I'm going to wrap around once, twice. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start heading back towards my right, and I'm going to make just a little bit of a bulky wrap again. Then after we're done with that second wrap around, we're going to go ahead and give it another little trim. And then we're going to tuck in that tail so that nothing is poking out. Isn't that cute? All right, so now what we're going to do is add our bead. And again, we don't want a long neck. I want my loop to go in the same direction. So I'm just bending it over the bead, come in with my round nose pliers. I don't need as big of a loop this time. So I'm forming over, then I'm going to push the tail to the back, get that all centered. And now I'm going to come in with my chain nose pliers. Then we're going to just lock that in place, bring in our second pair of chain nose pliers, and start wrapping around. I'm going to go 2 or 3 times down. Then what I'm going to do is start working my way back up towards my right hand and just give it that second layer of wraps. Gives it a little bit of a bulky wrap, which is so cute. I really love the bulky wrap look. Then what we're going to do is come in with our cutters, give it a little bit of a flush cut, and then go ahead and tuck that in because we don't want anything poking out. Now we have all of our dangles and we're ready to continue on with the rest of the necklace. Now we're going to grab our 18 gauge wire, and I have about 4.5 inches, and I'm going to straighten things out. I want to warm it up a little bit. And now what we're going to do, I just grabbed a seed bead container. You can use anything you wish. You don't have to make it round if you don't want to, but I'm just going to bring up the ends, and I want to even the ends up so that it's a nice kind of half circle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our dangles and slide them on to this little hoop that we made. Now what we need to do is make a couple of loops up at the top. So we're going to make some simple loops at the very, very, very tippy tip of our round nose pliers. We're going to now roll away from us until the end meets the length there. And we're going to do the other side the same, where we're just going to roll, roll, roll until the end meets the length of the pendant. And now we have a beautiful little pendant. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to cut up the chain. So the chain already has like where our clasp can meet. But now what I'm going to do is I want to meet in the middle, and I'm going to cut off that last length. And we do need that bead for what we're going to be using the little beaded chain for. So we're going to be chopping up this beaded chain a little bit. So just come in and just cut off at the loop, give it a little bit of a trim, then cut off the other side at the loop so that now you have 2 lengths of chain. But now I want to cut a little bit off. So I'm going to come in 7 beads and I'm going to give it a trim. Then I'm going to cut off the other length, and I'm going to save those beads for next part of our necklace pendant. Now we have a short length and a long length. We're going to repeat on the other side, counting in 7 beads, giving it a trim, and we have 2 lengths of 7, and then we have 2 longer lengths. Now what we need to do is we need to join them. So you're going to grab about maybe 5 inches of 22 gauge wire, and I'm going to come in about 1.5 inches down from the top, give it a 90-degree angle bend, and come in with my round nose pliers and form over the top barrel. Then I'm going to hold on, I'm going to rotate my wrist and then push the toe to the back. But before I start wrapping, I need to get it a little bit centered. Let's get it centered a little bit better. Then the next thing I want to do is I need to attach this to one of the chains. So we're going to just insert. Once you have that loop, there you go. We have that chain attached. And then we are going to then do a little bit of wire wrapping. So we're going to add our chain nose pliers. We're going to bring in a second pair of chain nose pliers after we get that locked in place. And for this one, we are just going to go once, twice. Let's get a hold of it. There we go. Twice and 3 times. We're not going to make a bulky wrap for these. Then what we're going to do is add one of our little turquoise spacers, one of the orange beads that we took from the chain, and another one of the turquoise spacers. Then we're going to take our chain nose pliers, give it a 90-degree angle bend, bring in our round nose pliers, and then what we're going to do is we are going to form over the top barrel. We're going to rotate our wrist. We're going to push the tail to the back, get that all nice and centered. Then what we need to do is attach this to that smaller 7-bead chain. And then we're going to come in with our chain nose pliers. And then we're going to start wrapping around 3 times. And you can use your fingers too if you have a long length. You notice I didn't trim the other side. That's because when I trim and try to tuck in the tail, I always mess up the wire. And so I get it doesn't stay clean. And so I just keep it on until I have both sides. So I have a bead to push up against when I am tucking in the tail. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to tuck in the tail on one side. Then we're going to flip it over and tuck in the tail on the other side. And now we have a beautiful length of half a chain, or half of our necklace. And you're going to repeat that on the other side. So now we have both strands all ready to go. And what we're going to do is bring in our pendant that we already made and some of those beads. So now we have the 2 chains that we're going to connect to the pendant, but we're going to need about 6 inches of that 22 gauge wire. And what we're going to do first is we are going to come down about 2 inches or so, give it a 90-degree angle bend, because we're going to do a bulky wrap on this one as well. With the round nose pliers, we're going to do as we've been doing this whole time, forming over the top barrel, pushing the tail to the back. Now what we're going to do is we are going to connect it to one of the sides of the chain. And what we're going to do is insert that into the loop. We're going to bring in our chain nose pliers, and we're going to go ahead and start wrapping around. And we're going to wrap around twice. Bring in those other chain nose pliers. We're going to go around twice. Then we're going to start making our way back towards the right so that we can get a nice bulky wrap. And then you're going to also wrap it around twice. And then when the wire gets to the back, then we're going to go ahead and bring in our cutters and give it a little bit of a trim. And since it ends at the loop, I'm not too worried about messing up the wire. I am going to bring in a second pair of pliers, and I'm just going to very carefully push in that tail up against those bent chain nose pliers. Okay, now here's where the fun starts. First thing we want to do is we want to add one of those little turquoise spacers. Then we're going to add one side of our pendant. Then we're going to take a bead cap. Then we're going to add our bead. Love those beads. And another bead cap. Then we need to get that wire to go through the other loop. And so I just kind of grab it, and then I grab onto the beads and the bead cap, kind of push down the end and then push it through with my right hand, back all the way through. Then we're going to grab another one of those turquoise beads and thread on the end. Then I don't want a long neck, so we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing, where we're just going to give it a 90-degree angle bend over the bead, just like so. And then we're going to come in with our round nose pliers, form over the top barrel. We're going to hold on to the wire after we get that over the top barrel and rotate our wrist. We're going to push the tail to the back, give it a little bit of a rotation so that we can get it centered. Then we're going to add it to the other side chain. Isn't this cute? I'm loving this. Now we're going to bring in our chain nose pliers and put our chain nose pliers over that loop. And then we can come in with our hand, with our fingers there. And one wrap. We're going to do 2 wraps to the left, and then we're going to come back towards the right so that we can have a nice bulky wrap. And just be really careful. A lot of stuff going on there, but man, is it worth it. This is such a pretty necklace. We're going to come in with our cutters and give it a little bit of a trim. And then we're just going to tuck that in. I've got to grab onto that loop with that secondary pair of pliers and come in and just very carefully tuck that in. And here we have our necklace using Magical Mystery Bead Box for June from Jessie James Beads. Thank you.